Jorge. I don't trust it. It's so quiet. If the world isn't falling apart outside my very door, I just... Oh, hey! Hi! It's me, Wilma Fingerdoo, with the Fingerdoo review of RuPaul's Drag Race Season 13, Episode 4. And before we get started, I just want to send a shout out to my Tipperdoos this week. John Dwyer, Elaine Alden, and Vito Bocuzzi. Thank you so much for tipping me. If you would like to be a Tipperdoo, I use PayPal and the link is down below. All right, Jorge Drink Me! Oh, look at this, a cocktail with a garnish and everything. Well, it must be payday. I'm just saying. Ooh, what is it? Oh, Coke and tequila. Smooth. All right, I just want to start off by letting you know how happy I am to say there is no construction going on today. Watch, I just jinxed it. Okay, quick before it starts. We started this episode off with the pork choppers walking smack dab into the middle of the winner's circle in one of those annoying scenarios of us against them, which is totally abandoned anyway. But this time, there was a twist. The winner's circle agreed that it would be a hoot for Elliot to hide, so B Squad would think she actually went home. Oh, and to catch them throwing shade. Well, the pork choppers entered the workroom, and there was immediately that fabulous little B Squad comment that went out. I was really happy that Denali was quick enough to say the nowhere to go but down squad for the winner's circle. They didn't care. They were already winners. Well, it didn't take long for Tina Burner to ask the pork choppers where Elliot was, seeing as she'd already eliminated her. Sneaky. Don't turn your back on Miss Burner is all I'm saying. Stare at fly. Not that the rest of the winner's circle were any better. They drilled the pork choppers on why they chose Elliot to go home. They didn't have a good answer, and you could see that bothered Miss Tooties, so she exposed her ire as she stepped out and confronted the alleged haters. Needless to say, the pork choppers were gagged. Elliot was high on her hog, calling shade at all the pork choppers, voting her out. But this whole confrontation can be summed up in one response from Tamisha Aman. Well, they didn't vote me. They voted you. Never at a loss for words, Tooties threw back at her. Well, why didn't you jump up? And herein lies the problem I'm having with this whole thing. I'd like to see a scenario where Elliot jumped up and took the place of a queen who was voted out early, because Elliot doesn't strike me as being that benevolent, and we all know that every one of these queens feels total relief and closer to God every time they're not sent sashaying away. Seriously. So, in Drag Race tradition, the queens swept the drama under the rug for another day and finally celebrated being Season 13 queens, officially. The next day in the workroom, Tina wasted no time asking who was single. Is this her third time bringing this up? Seriously, watch out for Tina Burner. Don't drop nothing in front of her is all I'm saying. Poor JJ had to run for her young gay life when Candy found out she was single because, as Candy herself said, she can't win a crown, she's going to win herself a man. Whether he wants to be one or not, it's the thing. Something tells me JJ is going to be doing a lot of running this season. At least it's cardio. Thank God Ru showed up sans video message to give the queens this week's Maxi challenge, and a promise that by the end of the week, someone would be finally going home. Promises, promises. The queens were going to act in a holiday-inspired rom-com from the RuPaulmark Channel, and to mix up the two groups, Ru assigned the teams herself. Celebrating Valentine's Day was Denali, Elliot, Kimora, and Olivia in Misery Loves Company. Celebrating Flag Day was Lala, Rose, Simone, and Utica in God Loves Flags, which left April Fool's Day for Gottmik, JJ, Candy, Tamisha, and Tina Burner. The queens got down to work right away. Team Valentine's Day got down to casting their rom-com, and by that, I mean Denali, a queen who's never done scripted acting before, grabbed the lead role for herself to prove she was a top threat. And then immediately complained at how big a role it was. Well, okay, Denali, way to be a threat. Elliot went for the safe bet of typecasting herself as the stupid Cupid because, well, as she said, she's stupid. Hey, knowledge is power. Kimora thought Elliot's voice was stupid. Stupid enough to bother her at any rate. Personally, I just think Kimora was freaking out about this challenge and distracting herself with anything else. Over on Team April Fool's, Candy Muse called dibs on the character Whoopee Cushion and then started to highlight her script without waiting for anyone else to say anything. It clearly brought their team together. Team Flag Day seemed to get their roles cast without any issue. What was an issue for Rosé was Tina Burner. Both of them having an acting background, Rosé felt that Tina was her only competition and was using that realization to step up her game and not get caught up in the petty dramas. I mean, isn't this a petty drama right here? Thank God Ru showed up to check on the Queen's progress. Team Flag Day was up first and Ru revealed that all the scripts were exactly the same, so the real challenge for these queens was going to be making the roles their own. I hope they heard that. I'm serious. Rosé told Ru that even as a drag queen, she considered herself an actor first. Of course, they had to cut to Tina Burner hanging on every word, but I suspect she was in character. And that character hates Rosé. Ru was more interested in knowing why she and Utica voted Elliott out. I loved Utica's response, mostly because I agree with her. She told Ru that between herself and Elliott, she gives off a warmer vibe, whereas 2T's gives off a colder one, which is the nicest way anyone's ever called Elliott a cold bitch in her life. Utica also revealed that she got cast as the token queen, and by token, she meant token. Wondering if Utica was a method actor, Ru asked if Utica ever smoked the marriage hooch. Her non-committal response had Ru laughing so hard, I wondered if she'd had a puff or two before coming in there. Why else throws tinted shades? I'm so serious. Whatever the reason, it was also a great way to show the queens how bringing themselves to the roles will bring the roles to life. Roles. Team April Fool's was next, and first on Ru's list was just how short were Candy Muse's short shorts. Well, short enough that Ru felt the need to ask is what I'm thinking. Ru also asked if Candy had any acting experience, because the thing about having a great personality is, can you turn it on when they call action? Looks to me like Candy was wondering that too. Tamisha told Ru that she was playing the role of Zoltina, which Ru said was based on Cher. So Ru asked to see her Cher. I would have bought Tamisha dinner first, but that's just me. And then I saw her Cher. She'd be lucky if she got drive-through with that, I'm so serious. Does anyone else think about Chad Michaels whenever somebody goes, whoa? Do you remember how he went on and on and said Cher never does that? I think she should start. Either way, I hope Chad's doing well. You could tell Ru wasn't impressed, so she asked Tamisha if she was a Cher fan, and if so, to name 5 Cher songs that aren't Believe. Well, Tamisha couldn't do it. She squeaked out something about gypsies, and that was it. Was anyone else shocked by that? Cher's had a #1 hit in each of the last 6 decades, and as the oldest next to Ru, Tamisha should have at least got 5 of them. Seriously, Tamisha admitted she'd rather portray Gladys Knight or Patti LaBelle, or Natalie Cole. So Ru said, channel one of them as your Cher. Use whatever helps you get there. I guess that makes sense, but I don't think that Natalie Cole would do a very good Cher impersonation, I'm just saying. Gottmik revealed that she was playing April Fool, which Ru pointed out had a lot of lines, but Gottmik assured her that she had a good memory. So, Ru asked Gottmik to name the 3 singers that Tamisha had just named. Gladys, Patti, and Natalie. Well, Gottmik could only name Patti. And then distracted Ru by complimenting her on her fabulous pussy bow. Who else thought Gottmik was going to stop at pussy? Apparently, Team Valentine's Day wasn't worth talking to. I blame Elliott. Before Ru left, she revealed that this week's runway look was going to be trains for days, and with that, it was off to shoot their rom-coms with the one and only Ross Mathews. Up first, the April Fools. Tina was an obvious fave for Ross, and why wouldn't she be? She was serving all kinds of mommy dearest realness. Gottmik seemed to be holding her own next to Tina, which I'm sure is no small feat. And then we got to Tamisha. She was all up in her head. Even if she'd never heard of Cher before, she could have nailed this part just with Ross's directions alone. Which is what I think she did, because Tamisha actually turned it around. The biggest surprise out of the Fools was JJ and how badly she did. She repeated lines, she didn't play to the camera. It was a lot for our Miss JJ to keep in her pretty head. Thank God for Candy, aka Whoopee Cushion. I don't know why, but all I could think of while Candy was performing was Rosie O'Donnell. Anyone else? You could tell Candy killed it because Ross couldn't stop laughing the whole time she was on set. Good for you, Candy, seriously. The flag wavers were next, and Simone set their bar high, which surprised Rosé because she'd been so quiet during rehearsal. I say take notes. Which it appeared that Rosé did because she didn't suck either. No offense, but I'm convinced that Utica has more than a passing acquaintance with Marija Hooch because this queen could not remember her lines to save her life, much to Lala's chagrin. Which would have meant more if Lala hadn't been so stiff, and that's not a compliment. Poor Lala couldn't have had less energy if she buried her nose in her script and read it right off the page. I'm so serious. This is what Ru was telling Candy about big personalities disappointing when they call action. Just saying. Right out of the gate on the Valentiners, Denali was regretting her life choices, specifically choosing the role with the most lines because she couldn't remember any of them, poor thing. Ross had to stop Denali again and again to get her to read her lines with the right intentions, and when she did, she blew it by calling the fudge packing factory the fudge packing factory. Personally, I like my fudge hand-packed. I'm so glad Olivia made fun of Kimora being in full drag to shoot in front of a green screen because her nipples were distracting me. Anyone else? They certainly didn't help her with her line delivery, which, ironically, was very wooden, no matter how Ross directed her. Hell, she's a treat. I'd have let her be wooden. On a side note, Elliot dressed up as Cupid was hilarious. The next day was Elimination Day, and the queens were excited to get ready for their runway, although more than a few of them were also excited to see some of these queens start to go home, finally. Well, they weren't the only ones, seriously. Candy started the day out by reworking her train look for some such reason, and I thought it was very kind of Tina and Gottmik to help her pull her look together. They're obviously becoming very close in a very short time, and have started calling themselves the Shady Bitches. Well, let's see how close they stay when their numbers start to dwindle, I'm just saying. As the queens got ready, they talked about their first time in drag. I love Simone saying she used to rush home after school to play with makeup before her parents came home, and then decided to go to her prom for the first time in drag. I couldn't imagine going to prom in drag. I didn't even want to go wearing a suit, I'm so serious. I have to say it's fabulous to hear Simone say that all the fear she had as Reggie, she didn't have as Simone. And let's face it, no offense, but she had a lot to be afraid of growing up in Arkansas, I can guess. I'm so serious. JJ asked if anyone ever dated a woman. This was another great story. Tamisha didn't even know she was gay until after high school, which is when she had her first child at 17, practically a child herself. I also love that Tamisha named herself after her oldest daughter. I hope her oldest daughter does too. And then it was time for the runway. I don't think I could love Ru's dress any more than I did. The color, the cut. It's my favorite dress from this season and Drag Race UK so far. Michelle was looking pretty in plaid. Ross was back from his stint directing and looking fabulous in florals. And the love of my life, comedian and host of The Real, Miss Lonnie Love, looking gorgeous in glittery gray. Category is Trains for Days. Denali's cockatoo cocktail dress with train was a total Fingerdoo for me. The wig was a work of art on its own, and that ostrich feather train was everything, which is good, because that was the point. Olivia's Rococo fantasy was gorgeous. I just wish the train had been longer. This wasn't a train for days for me. This was more like a train for the moment. But still a Fingerdoo. The only thing that was interesting about Elliot's runway was the train, which looked like it was just belted to a leotard. I want to give it a finger don't, but the train was too good. Kimora was an obvious Fingerdoo. That gold Mother of Dragons look was beautiful. Personally, I would have liked to have seen the spikes down her train made of the same material as the dragon's head on her shoulders, but I'm just being picky. Simone took my breath away. This look was stunning, and so was she. Turning a do-rag into a train was genius, although technically, when it's on your head, I think it's called a veil. But who cares? It's still a Fingerdoo for me. I wasn't a big fan of Lala's runway until she shed that skirt with a train to reveal her leotard with a double train. And then it was a Fingerdoo. Utica's nod to Carol Burnett was another Fingerdoo for me. I love the colors she used, and that train was severe. Rosé's power suit was gorgeous in its simplicity. I love that her wig matched her lapels. It's not a euphemism, it's a Fingerdoo. Gottmik's outfit was beautiful, but I wouldn't call what was going on back there a train. It reminded me more of those festival outfits with the wire and fabric. But I love a bedazzled blower, so Fingerdoo. No offense to Tina Burner, but I hated this runway. There was too much going on. The skirt was too long, the tulle under the arms was unnecessary. The fact that her train was train tracks was cute, but by the time I saw it, I lost interest, so it's a finger don't for me. Sorry about it. Joey's was another look I didn't like off the top. It seemed boring to me, but that tongue train really impressed me because tongue train was my drag queen name in high school. I didn't hate Candy's runway, but I definitely didn't love it. She looked okay, but compared to the other queens, it looked like she'd rented it from a Renaissance fair, so it's a finger don't for me. Tamisha was another finger don't for me, I'm afraid. That ruffle of tulle across her waist was distracting, and although I'm a whore for a little hat, I was not feeling that one, I'm sorry to say. Then it was time for the RuPaulmark Channel's original programming. First up, Misery Loves Company. Sweet beats. Thank God they gave us an eyeful of handsome JBC there at the end is all I'm saying, because I could barely watch the rest of it. And that's because Denali was in every scene. Poor thing. There hasn't been a performance that stiff since, well, Kimora played that tree. As for Olivia and Elliot, they both did a good job, but the best part of their performance was that they weren't Denali and Kimora, is all I'm saying. Seriously. Next, it was God Loves Flags, and I don't know what accent Simone was doing or who she was channeling, but it was hilarious. And because she was in almost every scene, the whole rom-com was adorable. Rosé did a great job as well as the little gnome person, and Utica didn't suck as bad as she did during the rehearsals, but poor Lala still seemed to come off a little flat. Maybe she was channeling an actual flag. Last was April Fool's Rush In, and all I have to say is, meh. Maybe it's because they were last, maybe it's because they followed Simone's team, but this rom-com did not do it for me. No one sucked per se. Tina and Gottmik both seemed to share the same note, and it got tedious. JJ could have been anyone under that poor wig thing, and Tamisha did a good job as old Tina, but she was still too guarded. Thank God for Candy Muse is all I'm saying. I didn't even understand half of what she said, but it was a breath of fresh air compared to everyone else. Just saying. And then it was time for the judges' critiques. Right away, Ru announced that Elliot, Olivia, Utica, JJ, Gottmik, Tina Burner, and Tamisha Iman were all safe. So they freaked off to the Untucked lounge. Utica was thrilled. She didn't see being safe as a bad thing. Olivia was disappointed to just be safe, but was grateful to live to slay another day. As the Queen's Untucked, Tina Burner took off her overcoat, and I immediately loved her outfit more. She looked like a cross between a rockette and a cigarette girl. What a shame about that coat. For the most part, the queens were relieved that they weren't going home first. Everyone complimented Olivia on how funny she was on camera. But Tamisha was disappointed in her finished product. I'm starting to feel a touch of the Nina Bonina Browns from poor Tamisha. It's like she can't find joy in anything she's doing. Let's hope that's not the case. Did anyone else notice that you did that everyone gave Utica after she said she just wanted to do really well this week? It sounded more like a you did than a you did. Just me? Then the inevitable happened. The queens discussed who they thought was in the top and who was in the bottom. Everyone agreed that it was down to Simone or Candy for the win, and that Layla and Kimora were in the bottom. Back on the main stage, it was time for the judges' critiques. Everyone loved Denali's runway, but Michelle called her out on not taking her character further, while Ross said she failed to make her character interesting. No one could tell Kimora nothing about her runway, but as far as her acting, it was flat, and all the judges felt her need to be perfect was holding her back. Simone was another one you couldn't tell anything to. Everyone loved her do-rag train veil. Miss Lonnie Love called it the soul train. Ross couldn't say enough about Simone's preparedness and complimented her on how well she delivered all her lines. Lonnie Love loved her some La Ree, well, at least her runway, but that didn't stop the judges from throwing some shade at Lala's acting. But at least Lala admitted that she was out of her element, because once you admit there's a problem, the healing can begin. Michelle wasn't a big fan of Rosé's runway, but loved her performance as the gnome. Ross even commented on how easy she was to direct. That's really not how I thought he was going to finish that sentence. Candy's train wasn't trainy enough for Michelle. In fact, she wasn't a fan of the dress as a whole, mostly because of the holes on the side. But even RuPaul commented on how laugh-out-loud fabulous she was in the challenge. And then it was off to the Untucked lounge while the judges deliberated. They told the safe queens who was in the top and who was in the bottom, and it was clear that Kimora was getting emotional over being in the bottom. She saw it as a failing, and the other queens reminded her that she succeeded. She got there. That's the problem with RuPaul's Drag Race. These queens forget that the challenge these days is getting there. Each year, more and more people apply for Drag Race. Being one of a dozen or so queens that makes it to the show is the prize. Everything else is icing. So bring a Big Mac, I'm just saying. Candy was surprised that Lala and Denali were in the bottom and called out Elliott as the one who should have been. Personally, I think Candy's just trying to get back at Elliott for reminding her that her drag sister Dahlia went home first on her season. Either way, Elliott didn't care because Candy's name ain't RuPaul. Thank God the queens changed the subject by congratulating Simone on a strong performance this week. It also felt to me like the queens were really feeling the looming elimination and spent a fair amount of time reminding each other that this was not the end and that they were a family forever and all the things you say to make losing easier for someone else. Come on! Denali and Rosé had an interesting moment, eh? Because Denali was in the bottom this week after beating Rosé out in last week's lip sync for the crown, Denali couldn't look at her. But while Denali fought back her tears, Rosé gave her a great pep talk and reminded her to fight. It was touching. It surprised me. Before the queens headed back to the main stage, Kimora took a moment to thank everyone for their love and support on the show, just in case she didn't get a chance later. Denali also had a moment with her Chicago sister about bringing it to the runway for their hometown queens. And then it was time to head back to the main stage where Ru announced that this week's winner was, surprise, surprise, Simone! No one was more relieved to be safe than Lala Reed, but sadly, that left Kimora Hall and, shock of shocks, last week's winner Denali in the bottom. This week's lip sync was to Crystal Waters' 100% Pure Love, and right away Denali proved that she was there to win because she ditched that train and proceeded to dance the hell out of that song, while Kimora couldn't have looked more beautiful. But even though she worked her way all over that stage, I don't think I saw Kimora move once. So it was no surprise to me that Ru wasted no time in telling Denali to Shantae, and sadly, it was Kimora who became the official pork chop of season 13 as she was asked to sashay away. No. Well, what do you think? Did the right queen go home? Should Elliott have been in the bottom? What about Denali? Will she be in the bottom again? All we can do is tune into RuPaul's Drag Race Season 13 next week to find out. And when you're done, you come on back and you see me so we can compare notes. Until then, don't forget to like this video if you did. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't. And until next week, miss me. Mwah. Seriously, Jorge. I feel like I'm in a bar. Not a good bar. Were you as shocked as I was to see JVC pop up at the end of those rom-coms? Haven't thought about him since Drag Race Canada. I'm wondering how many Canadians had a little touch of the PTSD when they saw him. Oh, my pants! I'm just saying. But he's so cute. Maybe if he could do this job without talking. Lots of beautiful people have jobs where they don't talk. I can't think of any right now. Certainly no famous ones. Hold on. Is that construction? Quick, wrap it up!